Hello, everybody. LC Holt here. This is my update for the week of December the 9th. And I'm sitting here with a couple people. You haven't seen all three of us together in quite a while since we last talked about, I don't know, one of those alien movies. Today we're going to talk about an alien movie, but not that series. So let me introduce, does anybody watching this show not know who Damian Maffei is? Because I think you've been on here with me like 5 times. And you're more famous than God.
He's fallen out of favor a lot, so. And I have risen. I don't like the face Rebecca's making after you said that.
Rebecca has obviously not seen Haunt.
I mean, it may be an exaggeration, but I'm not a fan.
Okay, well, anyway, so there's Damian. Everybody knows who that is. Rebecca Ivey, you've been on the show.
Yes,
Everybody should know who you are, or else you're so square you don't watch the show because you've been on the last like 25 shows.
That's true.
That's my face. That's the face I'm making.
Yeah, let's look at that face.
Only people who watch this show would know who I am.
Well, on that note, let's talk for a moment about what we're actually going to talk about, which I haven't named. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Especially, we're going to focus on the 1978 version, which was directed by Philip Kaufman. But before we do that, Damian just looks completely baffled. Did you not know this is what the show was about?
I'm acting like I'm surprised.
Oh, I forget you're on stage right now. Look at that. Boom! I buy it. See, that's
like that. It's like from the movie.
Yeah, and then I make you make the face and I'll make the sound, which we're not gonna do. Don't do that because I'm not making that ridiculous sound. You just need bigger hair. You need bigger hair though.
Yeah.
More of a perm than you got right now. Let's talk for a second about this book because you can't really talk about the movie without talking about Jack Finney's novel, which was not called Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I almost said Baby Snatchers, which is a whole difference.
That's a different book.
That's called the Charles Lindbergh story. This is called simply Body Snatchers. They added Invasion of for the film that was made the year after. Actually, it was originally published in serial form in Collier's magazine, 1954, but it was published as a novel the following year, and then the next year they made the original film.
Yeah, the 50s.
Yeah. Considered kind of a ripoff, no, of Heinlein Puppet Masters.
That's right. The book was considered a ripoff of the Puppet Masters, which is understandable to some degree. I mean, I prefer, of the two books, I prefer the Jack Finney Body Snatchers. I actually think I really love that book. I love the way it unfolds, and I love the characters in it. Very briefly, it's about a real-life town called Mill Valley, California. The book is set there. And it's about this man, and he has sort of a lady friend, and then they have these two pals that live on the other side of town that the main character hangs out with, named the Belichicks. And one night they get called to the Belichicks' house, and they realize that there's an exact replica of Mr. Belichick on the pool table in the basement. And they're like, what the fuck is this? They seem to say, but it's a 1950s book, so they don't actually say that. And then
they still slept in separate beds.
That's right. And it progresses from there. And this is actually how the movie that came out the next year went down in terms of the plot and everything. There are some changes, and I do want to point this out because as much as I love the book, The Body Snatchers, it's one of those rare books where I can say, I love this book, but I fucking hate this ending. It has one of the worst endings I think I've ever read. I mean, I can think of a few other times that have. Under the Dome is perhaps once when I had that reading a book. And come to think of it, the two endings are kind of similar.
The Mist?
The Mist, the book, The Mist. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I could see
Everything Stephen King's written.
that. Well, I don't know. I think there are a couple good endings he's gotten there, but yeah. It was funny though when I was watching It Chapter 2, and they go on and on and on about the ending. I was thinking the whole time like this ending had better not fucking suck because it's gonna be really embarrassing. And I'm not entirely sure that it didn't suck, that ending, but I think it was okay. There's one thing about
I knew Under the Dome. I knew I wasn't going to like the ending, and I love that book. In fact, I just reread that, and I mean, I have thousands of books I'm supposed to be reading, but I decided to read this 30,000-page novel again because I enjoyed it so much. But the first time I knew I wasn't going to like that ending because I was just like, well, I mean, what is he going to do here? Like, what? This is not going to be satisfactory. But the 30,000 pages leading up to it are good. I really like all the characters in it.
And it is a great book. It's just with Under the Dome and like Body Snatchers, it's literally the very end of the ending. I mean, it goes strong right up until the end.
Yeah.
And then, as is the case in both, I mean, I don't want to give away the Under the Dome book because I don't know, somebody may not have read it who wants to. But I can say these are similar endings. At the end of Body Snatchers, which I kind of have to give away, or else the point I'm making is kind of moot. So spoiler in 3, 2, 1, Body Snatch. At the end of the book, the pods just float up into space.
Yeah.
They've won. The pod people have actually won. They're spreading to San Francisco, to all these other places in California and theoretically the world. And so because they sense some sort of resistance in the human race, for no good reason, the pods just decide to leave. And you just go, well, like, Jack, did you just run out of, like, did you hit a deadline or something, dude? Because it's not a very good ending, not a very satisfying ending. It's interesting, though, because they changed that ending sort of for the 1956 movie.
Yeah.
It originally they were going to the 1956 movie, which was produced by Walter Wanger. It's his name, Walter Wanger. I'm not making that shit up. And it was directed by a guy named Don Siegel. It was shot in 23 days, I think it was, and like $350,000 budget. So it was not a huge motion picture event even for that time. They did change the real life, because I said the book was made in the real life, was written about Mill Valley, which is a real life place. They changed it to Santa Mira, which is not a real place in California for the movie. But other than that, it's pretty true to the book until you get to the ending. I mean, the whole thing about, the pod people, they only live for 5 years. Damian has just shut me off here. What are you trying to take me down, man? What is that? You're hurting my feelings.
I'm listening to you.
Pod people,
if anyone is paying attention to what I'm doing on the screen, then you've not done your job. How about that?
Well, listen, pal. Listen, my ever supportive pal, sitting on a stage set.
It looks like he's in a basement.
Now, I still say it looks at any moment like you're just going to break out into a monologue, full stage monologue.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I was saying was the pod people, they live for 5 years. Whoa, pardon me. They live for 5 years and they cannot sexually reproduce, meaning that the end of the human race will come very, very quickly. And Jerry Orbach is about to sit down in that chair and Chinese coffee is about to begin, I swear to God. But they get you while you sleep. They get you while
you sleep.
It's very Freddy Krueger in a way.
Yeah.
That's why sleeping is bad.
Wes Craven read this and he was like, I tell you what, he watched this movie. He could have watched either one of them because both of them came before Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
And he said, we're going to do it. I wanted to say, too, what I was going at there was that the book and the original movie were pretty close together. Kevin McCarthy, who was a newcomer, played the lead role in that Miles Bennell, Dr. Miles Bennell, in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But you had some other people in there.
They're coming!
That's right. They have arrived. Dana Winter was in there. We all know and respect the great career of Dana Winter. I mean, obviously played Becky. You're both looking at me like, who the fuck is that? Well, I don't know
Becky
either.
on Roseanne.
That's right. That's right. She's the weird one. Now I know
Darlene?
that. Hey, guess what? Guess you know you obviously you all know this. Sam Peckinpah makes an appearance in this movie, and it has nothing to do with slow motion or bullets flying either. He's thinking about it, but it's not actually happening. He actually makes a cameo as a meter reader in this movie. Now, the original cut of this film, Don Siegel pulled out of his ass what is possibly a truly dark ending. And it had to do with Miles Bennell, played by Kevin McCarthy, seeing trucks. Seeing trucks. That's right. You know, actually, I think that's part of the added shit. But originally, he just saw these trucks heading toward the city, and he realized, oh my God, everything we've done is for naught. They're going to get to the city. They're going to take over San Francisco and everywhere else, Los Angeles, which, I mean, would people really notice? Oh, did I say that out loud? I thought that was like one of the.
It's okay.
But the producers, Mr. Wanger, I said.
Wanger.
Walter Wang, playing with his wang. He actually feared that pessimism could destroy the box office potential of this movie. So though Don Siegel wanted to have this glorious dark ending, like grown-ups would enjoy, they said that this would play perhaps in a matinee and children might be put off.
Well, we're all about tormenting children.
I know. I mean, in a few years, just wait until Night of the Living Dead hits the matinees, right? So basically what happened was they made him go back in and he had to reshoot a prologue and an epilogue with Miles Bennell in a hospital talking to a psychiatrist about what had happened. And then at the end of the movie, in the epilogue, the psychiatrist revealed they found some of those trucks and they managed to catch them before they got to the city. So it just leaves open the possibility that maybe they had prevented this invasion. Still a better ending than the book, in my opinion. What do you guys think? What do you think, Damian?
Leave it the way you wanted it.
Right.
That's what I say.
And you, Damian Maffei?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like that ending, although I don't necessarily, contrary to popular opinion, I don't necessarily prefer the dark, bleak ending of things. I guess, it depends, whatever. It is better than the book, but it's really not quite, it's not very satisfying.
Yeah,
and abrupt.
It does have that little bit of 50s cheese in there too, But at the same time, and they slap the invasion of on there, which creates a little bit more of that 50s cheese. You just imagine giant ants or something, invasion of. But it's not a bad title. It's been used several times, in the future.
Making me think of the Blob when you're talking about 50s cheese.
The Blob.
Oh yeah, Steve McQueen.
Yes. And then there's the allegedly great 1980s version, which I still have to put allegedly in front of. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry.
You are just vicious.
Well, what makes the original legit is the the Burt Bacharach song and Steve McQueen and Helen from Andy Griffith's, his girlfriend.
I mean, the 1988 one. What did you say? Allegedly.
I said allegedly great. I said it's allegedly great.
It's pretty cool. It has its problems, but it does do a lot of good stuff. It's pretty brutal, that movie.
I have to say that the Frank Darabont, I respect very much what he did with the script in terms of how he changed it from the original one. I kind of like that.
It's better than the original.
And I just
that not.
Well, I mean, I think it's better than the original. Yeah, I would say that's pretty safe to say, but it doesn't take much.
No, but the original was bad even for the time it was made. And
Yeah.
Steve McQueen, allegedly great. Steve McQueen.
Well, are we saying in that movie or just in general?
In general.
Well,
A little bit one note.
Well, he may have, but what, you know, it's
Statham of his time.
A lot of them were, though. A lot of them,
I mean,
a lot of actors, you see them and stuff.
I
they're
agree.
they're playing themselves.
But I'm not gonna,
That's their shtick.
not gonna give him a pass.
Look at John Wayne. John Wayne, he had a shtick in every film.
I do get that, but there were brilliant actors before them and during their time. So it's not like it was an alien concept.
They're great actors. You never hear from them.
Claude Rains, Montgomery Clift. These were all people who were alive at that time. Marlon Brando.
Yes, Marlon Brando was. I think that McQueen, when he was in the right role in the right film, I think was very effective as well. I mean, he's sort of like Gary Cooper. I mean, Gary Cooper is not for everybody. He is kind of one note. It's sort of like Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner is essentially Kevin Costner. I mean,
even in Robin Hood.
When people say that Kevin Costner is like the modern Gary Cooper, I can kind of see what you're saying, because they are sort of the one note guy that played that thing, and it was very laconic, very Midwestern, very I'm just a guy sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
they were very successful and they sold tickets.
That's true. Well, that's true about both of them, and Steve McQueen as well. How in the hell are we off on Steve McQueen when we were talking?
Never did a wonderful comedy like what's it called? That
Bullet is hilarious. Okay.
That's true.
I'm kidding. Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, so, back to the topic.
I would say, though, before we get off of this 1956 version, it was very much ignored by critics, and, it was mildly successful in its time, but, I mean, it's nothing to write home about. Years later, in 94, though, it was chosen to be a part of the United States Library of Congress film preservation program, which does say something about it. I think it does capture the sense of paranoia at that particular time. And it's very much, it's sort of like I mean, obviously it's McCarthy era.
Yeah.
So they took Kevin McCarthy era, exactly. That's right. It's connected on so many levels. They're coming to get him. I don't know if he was ever blacklisted, but a lot of people were. It's actually near the end of the McCarthy thing. So, that was in the air, and I think Don Siegel sort of thought about that as a subtext a little bit. But kind of cool if you think about it in those terms, and the whole idea of the communists are coming and all that. Yeah. The communists being like the pod people that are just going to take us all out, because they're communists.
Dirty commies.
That's what they do. Now let's jump over into the film that we were actually going to talk about today more than anything else. And it does not star Steve McQueen, nor does it, but Kevin McCarthy does make an appearance. And it is the
Kevin Dillon.
Kevin Dillon. No, not that film. Before that, about 10 years prior. We're talking about Invasion of the Body Snatchers 78.
Right.
Jesus, not Kevin Dillon with his fucking hair, with that Patrick Swayze Roadhouse thing. I'm sorry, I can't get past it. I can't get
past it. The melty guy from RoboCop.
And his face is really weird. Kevin Dillon's face is really weird. He doesn't look like a heartthrob. He looks like a weird nerd with fucking Patrick Swayze hair in a leather jacket.
Wow.
So anyway, Philip Kaufman directed this. Earlier, we did a show about Indiana Jones, the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
And Philip Kaufman is the guy who helped co-create Indiana Jones with George Lucas. Only they called it Indiana Smith, but at that time. But Kaufman came up with the idea of the Ark of the Covenant. And he's credited as co-story writer on Raiders of the Lost Ark. He also did The Outlaw Josie Wales as director and many other films. But he is the director. of this 1978, I think, colossal remake. One of the times when I thought a remake really, hit the nail on the head.
Wasn't he like didn't he like appear in it too? Didn't he have like a little
Yeah, he has an appearance.
cameo or something? Yeah.
He does the little Sam Peckinpah deal,
Yeah.
He has a little appearance in there. We'll talk about some cameos in this, but he was friends with Don Siegel, and he was a fan of the original. And though he wanted to pay tribute to the original film, and his buddy's kind of vision, he had new ideas of how he could re-envision it. And primarily, he thought, well, let's take it out of the small town and put it in the big city.
The big city.
That's right. The big city of San Francisco, where people wear flowers in their hair. I've used that joke twice now on the show.
There are flowers in the pod.
Yeah, there actually were. They were.
Yeah, they were.
They were you got Michael Chapman, the famous DP, to shoot the film. Rebecca, you'll like this part. Ben Burt.
Ben Burt.
She has a crush on Ben Burt.
Ben Burt.
He did the sound design for the 1978.
He's a genius.
I tell you what, he came up with some amazing shit for this movie, including the sound that I refused to make when Damian did his point and face. That thing. Yeah. He created that sound using how Ben Burt with Star Wars would use these like combinations of sounds like pigs squealing and like.
I know, yeah.
It's really ingenious how he
going around hitting wires and changing it. Yeah.
And That's how you do it.
And he came up with the idea of, I think the sound design of this particular movie is notable because it's so quiet. You hear basically the sounds of the street. When you're inside, you kind of hear room tone and not much else. There is this presence as the film, and this was a Ben Burt idea. This was this presence in the film of this industrial sort of sound going, and it would get worse and worse and worse and worse until you got to the end where you're in the warehouse and it's just this constant like industrial sound. And it's just this whole idea of everything being, mechanical, growing more and more mechanical. And I really dig that because it creates a mood and it creates a world. It's sort of the way I think of David Lynch films, where the soundscape and the choice of mood or ambiance or nothing is what puts you inside this vision of a world, which doesn't necessarily have to be the real world. It's just a consistent vision of a world that you want to be in.
Have those two worked together?
Ben Burt and David Lynch?
Yeah.
I wish. That would be something I'd love to see. It came close one time. But David Lynch saw those Ewoks and was like, fuck this shit.
Yep.
But I would so love to have
He's
seen.
Like, bye, Felicia.
He was like, I got Dune to make. See ya. But it's interesting. All the effects in this film were actually done in camera. My God, could you imagine that happening now?
No. It breaks my heart.
Yeah. You know what? You were talking about cameos. Before I get into all that kind of filmmakery type shit, I want to talk about a couple of the cameos. Don Siegel, the original director, appeared in this. Philip Kaufman himself appeared in it.
Mm-hmm.
But Kevin McCarthy appeared in it as a man running at the beginning going, oh, they're here. And then he gets hit by a car, which was very sad for me. Because I always thought, is that Miles from the original movie? And if so, he survived all that shit just to get hit by that car.
Right. That's that bleak stuff you were looking for in the first one.
Yeah. And this movie is definitely bleak. I think we can all agree. It has a very bleak quality to it. But I want to point out probably the most talked about cameo in this film, because it is so mysterious, comes very near the beginning of the movie. The swing. Yes. She looks over and there's a priest on a swing going back and forth, and the camera lingers on him and kind of does this nice little push zoom in deal. And a lot is made of this priest, though he never says anything. And you look at, when I watched the movie, I was like, hey, is that Robert Duvall? And then I was like, why is Robert Duvall in this? Like, does he show up later? It's like, no. Robert Duvall is just in the movie, dressed as a priest, on a swing, going back and forth, never says a word. It's brilliant. It's beautiful.
That'd be a good gig.
Yeah, and he refused payment, too. They were going to pay him, whatever scale was or whatever the day. And
maybe he just enjoys craft service.
He just happened to be in San Francisco visiting George or Francis Coppola. And they were like, well, hey, do you want to, because, all these guys knew each other, obviously. Like, well, would you want to just be this thing? We'll throw you in, because Philip Kaufman was like, every horror movie needs a priest. We'll throw you in a priest outfit. Mm-hmm. Go be on a swing. Robert Duvall was like, yeah, sure, fine. Let's do it. Got good craft services.
That's it. It's as easy as that.
Sandwich.
It's as easy as that.
So what do you think, Damian? Who was that priest and why was he swinging? Let's get very
I think he was the first one.
Yeah, he was definitely a pod person, wasn't he?
He was the messenger, the deliverer.
Yes, possibly the first pod we made. Because these pods at the beginning of this movie are like these gelatinous shit on this planet that go up into the atmosphere and fly through the solar winds, even though solar winds aren't actually winds. But we'll just say they are for this purpose. They fly through the solar winds and they land on Earth and it rains.
He's on I don't mean to cut off your thesis on solar winds.
Right.
Your dissertation or whatever educated people call them.
PhD soon.
But
I'll be a doctor in solar winds.
He's on the swing, but he's not showing any emotion. Yeah. And it's like, would a pod person go on the swing? Because that's like a thing you do to enjoy your
swings.
They do?
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Well, that's a good point.
He's doing
actually.
it to fit in, but he's got no emotion.
That's a good point. That's a very interesting point because there are some points in this movie where you have there's a lot of point in that sentence. I realized after the fact where you have pod peoples doing things and you wonder, are they a pod person or are they not? Are they imitating this behavior so as not to be caught when they're still in the minority, or is this part of who they are? You know what I mean?
Or is it just sloppy?
Or is it just sloppy filmmaking? Which, I don't know. It could just be the kind of thing where a director goes, we're going to cheat on the mythology here for just a second because we need a cool little thing to happen. Which, that movie, The Faculty, is basically that. It's that, the feature film version of that. They're like, we don't need any consistency here. I want this person's head to come off and crawl around on tentacles because that's going to be really cool. And it doesn't make any sense to the movie, but we'll just do it.
And welcome to Robert Rodriguez.
That's right. Who needs a script? I have a napkin with some shit written on it.
You know what would be cool? And then boom.
Yeah, it's all cool. All you need to know about this is it's super hip and super cool.
This is cool.
Now, let me talk about the cast of this movie because it's worth mentioning these folks. Number one.
Talk about them.
Well, I'm gonna get everybody in on this. Donald Sutherland.
Donald Sutherland.
Yeah.
And his perm.
Perm, which he did not have in The Dirty Dozen, but sort of had in MASH, but definitely had in Don't Look Now. It was the 70s thing. It was like Gene Wilder. They all had these fucking weird ass perms.
Yeah.
Michael Caine was the king of the perm. I mean, I'm sorry.
He was.
There is no one who looked nerdier than Michael Caine in the 70s and 80s, but he's still cool. I like it. He plays Matthew Bennell, not Miles, Matthew. And once I go through this cast, we'll talk about some of the changes. Brooke Adams, and that enormous mouth of hers is the Great Gatsby. She's from the Great Gatsby. Later, she was in The Dead Zone, another immortal classic.
Shockwaves.
Shockwaves. I was just waiting for someone to say The Dead Zone wasn't an immortal classic.
I was just like,
it's not.
Hey, I do kind of like The Dead Zone.
It's half of it's good.
Which half?
The first half.
Oh, okay. You didn't like that.
And
Okay.
it's horrible.
I don't know. It's not my favorite Stephen King book. I've never gotten into the book. But,
I believe, for you trivia junkies out there, I believe Brooke Adams is married to Tony Shalhoub.
no shit.
I believe so.
That's really fascinating. Isn't Tony Shalhoub? Never mind.
He also played an alien.
Yes. Well, we're going to get to another alien connection here momentarily after we get off of Brooke Adams.
I know where you're going. I know.
He already knows it because this guy's head
Leonard Nimoy. No, I'm just kidding. Bronx.
Well, we can go to
Never
Leonard Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy was in a show with some aliens.
Yeah.
And a few of you may have heard of it. Now, my two guests on this show certainly have never heard of Star Trek because we're too cool for that.
I've never seen an episode of any Star Trek in generation. But don't tell anyone that.
But let me just say this because I got your back on that a little bit. I have watched, I think, almost all of the original series with William Shatner because this was like a thing with my brother and I when I was younger. He's older than I am, and he loves science fiction far more than I do. But he really loves science fiction and fantasy, not really so much horror. But he introduced me to the original Star Trek, which I watched religiously with him. But in terms of anything past that,
did you watch the cartoon?
No,
there was a cartoon?
Yeah, there was a cartoon.
No, we didn't watch that.
Yeah,
but
I used to watch the cartoon they showed on Nickelodeon, like on Sunday mornings. I used to watch that with my dad.
I have never heard this until now. I've just recently worked with people who work on this new Star Trek, and they're lovely, talented people.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they are. But
Well, there's the Star Trek thing. There's the next. Well, what I was trying to say before we got off on another thing was that I was trying to get your back because I've never watched the Next Generation or Deep Space Nine or anything like that. They're really boring. Next Generation to me is remarkably boring.
That Patrick Stewart?
Yeah, that's that one.
That's Patrick Stewart.
And then when they started doing the movies of like the Next Generation cast and stuff, the movie was made in such a way that you had to know their relationships from the show. And I felt like I was being invited to a party full of friends that were not mine.
I saw the Borg one.
That one was okay.
That one was
good.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Generation came out, and I was a kid when it came on, and I remember I kept asking my parents, "Well, where's Spock? Where's Captain Kirk?" And that's all I kept asking. They said, "No, this isn't about them." I'm like, "Watch this." They had to keep explaining it's a new story, and I was just very upset.
They're dead. Yeah, that's right. They're all dead. They're all dead, Rebecca.
I know. I was upset. All dead. I was all upset.
But anyway, moving on to the next member of this cast. We could do a whole show on just the credits of this cast.
Yes, obviously. We could. Yes.
Jeff Goldblum,
yes.
prior to this, had only done The Sentinel and did a little spot in Annie Hall, and of course The Immortal Death Wish, where he was freak number 2. But this was one of his first big things, and he plays Jack Belichick in this, and then his wife is what I was trying to get to earlier, is played by Veronica Cartwright, who is best known as the little girl from The Birds. And a year after this will be known as the first transgendered space engineer in cinema history. In what film? Alien. Star Trek.
I was looking over at him.
Yeah. Which we talked about that on the previous show. That Lambert was later revealed to have been a transgender.
Okay.
Just total silence on that. Okay, well, yeah.
I was looking at his reaction.
This was my attempt at being.
What do you want from me?
I just thought there was going to be a response. That's why I was quiet.
What in the hell happened on Damian's side of this conversation?
I don't know.
All the lights went out. He's about to become don't fall asleep. You'll be a pod person in like 2 hours.
Maybe he already
is. There anyone there?
That's what's going on here.
Fun.
But anyway, what I was talking about the cast is, and also about the beats of the story. Everybody in this, all the characters have an analog to the original. You know,
You didn't mention Pat Hingle.
yes, he's in the cast.
Hindle. Pat
Are you
Hindle.
talking about Art Hindle?
Yes, Art.
Art Hindle.
Black
Yes.
Christmas.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
named Art. That's what I said.
Yeah, he's Jeff.
Pat Hingle is he was sort of a rotund character actor.
Yes, he played Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, I said Art Hingle.
Yeah.
Okay, you didn't mention him. I just thought that was rude.
Art Hindle, yes, he was Jeffrey. He played Jeffrey, who is Sarah, or as Brooke Adams' boyfriend or husband, a dentist. He's the first of the primary characters to disappear. He becomes, a dust bunny and gets swept up by because that's essentially what happens in the movie is when the pod people take you over, you become a giant dust bunny and they put you in the back of a trash truck and they drive off with you. Now, one thing Don Siegel had said to Philip Kaufman is he said, Philip, what I really want you to do is respect my concept of a dark ending. Because that was the thing Don Siegel in the years past, in the years that had gone by, regretted most about the original film is that he didn't fight more for the ending that he wanted to do. And so, Kaufman managed to kind of pull that off famously because, after much tomfoolery and nudity ensues, because you get to see a lot of Brooke Adams in this as Elizabeth Driscoll, not Becky, but essentially kind of the same character. Oh, I should say that Matthew is not a psychiatrist in this version. He's a health inspector. Goes around and he has some great lines. I mean, one of the great lines of all time is it's a rat turd, and he says, no, it's a caper. It says rat turd, caper. Rat, caper.
Eat it.
If it's a caper, eat it. Yeah, that one. Yeah. Wow. You got to get that boom close so you can say, if it's a caper, eat it. So you get all the James Spader-ness of that delivery. But yeah, so it has a very dark ending to it. And the ending was, there's a little bit of a legend about this particular ending. And it just sounds like possible Hollywood bullshit. Because, I don't know, it's somewhat possible. But supposedly, nobody knew the ending of the movie, including Veronica Cartwright. And they gave Donald Sutherland the ending prior, like the day prior. And so when they showed up on the set with Veronica Cartwright, she didn't know, quote, unquote, the George Carlin infamous hatred of air quotes. She didn't know that he was a pod person.
I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either. That sounds very...
I don't buy that. That would be her reaction.
Oh,
like
she would go, wow.
Her organic reaction to that happening.
Right, that whole number. Which I'm not making. That's a great reaction. I'm just saying that, when she sees it.
It's a heartbreaking ending.
It is. It's a great
ending. My little heart. Breaks my little heart every time.
Breaks your cold
when
little
James
heart.
Cromwell says that'll do, pig, and when Matthew points, it breaks my heart. Yeah. And the Iron Giant when he blows up. Those are things that break my heart. E.T. not so much. Get the fuck out of here. But Matthew.
Let me tell you, I talking about E.T., which
Another
why not? Another alien. I didn't see E.T. until I was in my 20s. And I saw it when it was re-released in theaters, thanks to the person that's like on this, Rebecca is the person that took me to see it, because she was like, I've never seen E.T. I was raised, let me just give you a little bit of an insight into my mind. I was raised, we didn't see a lot of cartoons. Like I saw Bambi and like Beauty and the Beast and like All
Well,
Dogs
I
Go to
remember
Heaven.
showing
That's
you
it.
Wizard of Oz, and you're like, "This is depressing." I'm like, "Wizard of Oz is not depressing." You're like, "Yes, it is. She went back to Kansas. This is depressing."
Right.
I'm
That
like,
was my reaction.
"Oh."
And I watched that when I was in my 20s. It wasn't
Yeah.
a very like, let's watch family shit. Let's watch dogs talk to each other over spaghetti type household, you know. So when I saw E.T.,
What were you watching?
I was watching shit that I shouldn't have been watching, like all these horror movies that I make
With your
now.
family?
Well, no. My mother wasn't really into that stuff, but my dad would sneak it.
Because I was doing that too, but you know,
Yeah.
that was my own thing. But my family was trying to get me straight, you know, straight on the cartoons as you call them, or ET. But you know, and I would watch those.
The great film Mac and Me.
Well, had you seen Mac and Me?
I don't think so. I don't think
That
I've
fucking
seen
guy
that.
goes down in the wheelchair. He goes straight down there. He goes off
That's
the cliff.
right.
That meme I've seen. I've seen Mac and Me since then, but as a kid I didn't see it. Like people used to say stuff like, you know, my childhood was defined by the Goonies, and I'm like, I saw the Goonies when I was 18. I just didn't watch those kind of movies. I do like it though, like Gremlins.
Flight of the Navigator.
Flight of the Navigator. Paul Rubens was the voice.
Yeah, and I remember when I saw Flight of the Navigator, that I was annoyed that this actor, this person, was doing this Pee Wee Herman impression. It was annoying, and then I found out it was Paul Rubens, and it was even more annoying. And I just watched it again recently because we have Disney Plus, and it annoys me.
Have you looked up what happened to the kid from the movie? They followed him like years later. Just look it up where he's at now.
Is it depressing?
Well, you might. I'm going to just leave you. I'm going to make you look it up. I'm not going to tell you anything.
I wonder what kind of a person LC would have become if he had gotten like a double bill of Mac and Me and Meatballs too.
Yeah.
Now Meatballs I did watch. Like if it was
you watch Meatballs 2 then. Meatballs 2.
Yeah, I watched Meatballs. I watched all the Meatballs. I watched the Porkies. I watched shit that like you should never have watched at that age.
Hot
Zapped again.
I was really into like
Meathead was going home. His parents were making him hot ganip-ganaps, and he was really excited about it.
I just remember watching shit like Police Academy. That was a big one.
Oh, I used to love that one. Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know how we got off on this. All the like little nerdlings that want to see Invasion of the Body Snatchers being discussed, they're like, "What the fuck are you guys talking?"
It was because I said the ending was heartbreaking, and then I said Babe and Iron Giant, and
it's
E.T.
somehow
E.T. is what sparked it. That was the rabbit hole.
And then I started talking about like how I didn't watch movies I should have when I was a kid. And people still to this day are like, man, I can't wait for the next Pixar movie. But I really think that you have to get that ingrained in your head early, because whenever I see something, even if it's really good animation, it's sort of like when I read somebody's horror movie synopses on Amazon. If I see like, you know, 5 kids go into house and then and I don't get to the ... I'm like, nah, I've fucking seen it. Boom. You know, go on to something else. And so that's sort of, and I'm sort of the same way even with animated stuff. You know, I'm like, ooh, I don't want to see this. It's just not I've seen it.
Sometimes it's fun to just watch the 5 kids walk into the thing.
Or the one kid in Lady in White. Remember that? That was kind of a disturbing movie.
My thing is, if I'm going to watch the 5 kids, I'll just watch it like the 4 or 5 times it was done well. I don't need to see everyone's version of the 5 kids. I mean, it's sort of like if give me like the top ones. Give me like when it was a new thing and new ground was being broken, and I watched.
Pretty sure I was in a movie that was released this year that was about 5 kids that walked into a thing.
Oh yeah.
Click.
Squawk, squawk.
Well,
I don't need your money.
Well, no, I mean,
how's the view from that slightly taller than average horse you're on?
No, I mean, I've been on. I've been in movies like that, obviously, you know, and I mean, if my friends are in it, I love it.
He watches it every Thursday.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah, but when I have to go through like Amazon and every film has the same synopsis, it's like
I know.
You know, I'm not saying this isn't a personal thing, Mr.
No,
Maffei.
I mean, it's the kind of thing I would imagine hear from someone who really didn't have proper culture growing up and kind of,
Didn't watch E.T. or Wizard of Oz.
no E.T., no Wizard of Oz, no. I'm sure that you're not aware All Dogs Go to Heaven, or
I just said that was one of the ones that I watched. I specifically named All Dogs Go to Heaven, actually. And I'll tell you why, because I
was
remember
not listening because I was too busy thinking about how you were railing on all the movies I've done in the last 3 years.
Well, I mean, but aren't I railing on all the movies I've done in the last 10 years? Same shit. We play the same characters.
It's what sells, baby.
That's true. Yeah. Unfortunately. No, I mean, that's good. That's a good. I'm just saying as a whole, it would be good if we had other things.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yes, Invasion of the Body Snatchers was released.
Hold on. I did something. Okay, go on.
Was released December 22nd, 1978. A month after Jonestown. Did that keep it from getting massive box office? Hell no. People are dying all over the world. We're going to go watch this movie because Donald Sutherland, he was great in Don't Look Now. So
we loved him in MASH.
We need to see good defeat evil. So that's probably why they went out to see it.
That's right. And they're also probably like I am in real life where I go, this is a movie. So they went to see the movie, and it made $25 million in the U.S. on a $3.5 million budget. That's pretty impressive. Pauline Kael actually said this might be the best film of its kind ever made. I don't know how much you want to put into, critics, because that's like a whole other story.
Of what kind?
Say what?
Of what kind? Body Snatchers?
No, I think she was talking of horror or that sort of thing, I don't know. I don't think that that's true. I don't think that that's true even at that point. Mainly because I don't think anything is the greatest something of all time. I've never seen what I thought was the greatest something of all time, except for a movie that came out a few months ago called Haunt, which I think is the greatest slasher film of all time. That was for you, Damian, so that you would be, we could be friends again.
I agree.
So no, why is
Black Christmas is but then Haunt. Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right. But we're talking, if we're going to do that though, let's talk about the actual Black Christmas, not this fucking travesty. Not this fucking anyway, don't even get me started. Don't get me started. I'm going to start going into all this shit and I'm going to be like
Blumhouse, I don't those opinions are solely his. Call me up, guys. All right? Give me a call.
Yeah, call me, guys, and I'm going to tell you how to make a movie that's not based on something that was made 40 years ago. Oh, sorry, my bad.
See, you're going to have a lot of editing to do.
No, not at all. Not at all. Nobody's banging down my door, I can guarantee you. But let me say something about Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The concept of this movie seems like it should be so easy to get right. You should be able to take this basic idea and put it into any milieu, right? And kind of do the same thing, because there's always an air of paranoia, no matter what time you live in. You could take it, you could do it today, and you could do it about modern political climates and things like that. And somehow, this has been a very difficult thing for filmmakers to do. I mean, they made the film Body Snatchers in 1993. They named it after the book. Abel Ferrara did it. In that time period when Abel Ferrara was still kind of doing interesting stuff before he started disappearing off into like the land where nobody watched anything that he did, in which he's still a citizen of that country. It had good cast. It had Gabrielle Arnoir. It had Meg Tilly. It had Lee Ermey. It had Forrest Whitaker. It had a script that was co-written by Stuart Gordon. Sounds like a good idea, right?
Not really.
It wasn't really good. It was set in Alabama.
Sounds direct to video.
I mean, it was made for $3 million, and you know how much it made? 800,000.
That movie was made for $3 million.
No, that was made for $13 million. Pardon me, that was my mistake. $13 million. Yes, that's right. $13 million.
No way someone gave that guy $13 million and that's the movie they made. Why would someone pay Ferrera $13 million?
I don't know. His
career is based on like $50 movies.
That's right. And you know, doing some good $50 movies. King of New York is like I love that movie. I love that movie. I'm trying to think of.
It doesn't even look like a botched $13 million movie. It looks like maybe $1 million. Not even. I don't know.
No, it was a lot of money. It was $13 million. And
okay, but there's no one in the movie to justify that budget.
Well, I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. It was $13 million budget.
You know, when
they
you
spent
spend
it
that
on craft service.
But as an investor, when you put that kind of money into something, you want as much of a guarantee that you're going to get it back. You protect yourself. Yeah. And the way they used to protect themselves in movies and still kind of do is to try to get, names in there. And $13 million, they should have gotten
Well, they got Meg Tilly.
No one cares about Meg Tilly, then or now.
I think $10 million went into Abel Ferrara's cocaine budget. That was sort of a personal perk.
I'm sure that's where it went, but why? It doesn't. It's.
I don't know. I think we could go on forever about this $13 million, but one way or another, I actually, it's very weird how all these things connect to each other. Because like the first thing I ever auditioned for was this movie called Forrest Gump, which was somewhat successful even without me. And I was going to play the young Forrest, like with the legs and everything. And the boy that I auditioned with was the little kid that fell out of the helicopter in this movie. He also auditioned that day. And, he was telling me about being the little boy in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1993, because it had just been made. Because this was like 93. It was like just come out. And it was a very weird experience from what I understand. And his mother was talking sort of to my mother and saying how it was just a kind of a train wreck from get-go.
It looks like shit.
Yeah. So I think that I think there was a lot wrong with this movie, but for some reason, Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars out of 4 stars. I mean, Roger Ebert has had,
And you see the stuff over the years that he poo-pooed, and you go, what were you thinking? That's like a classic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can't put too much faith. Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, I think, took themselves way too seriously often. And I don't think they had a lot of, they didn't have a great sense of humor about them when it came to movies. They were maybe a little bit stuffy. The best one I ever saw, though, was their review for Poltergeist 3. I mean, they hit the nail on the head with that one, man. That was great. They pointed out the biggest flaw in the movie, which is the biggest flaw, is that every character in the movie spends 90% of the film going around calling the other characters' names. And I'd always thought that about that movie. Like, everybody calls to everybody else. The whole movie. I bet if you went through that script.
I don't think I've seen it.
You haven't seen Poltergeist 3? Man, you have missed out on a masterpiece.
Why would I? I feel like that's not the one with Tom Skerritt in the big building, right? That's 2.
Yeah.
No,
that's 3.
Tom Skerritt is okay. So I've seen that one. I've seen.
Yeah, he's Bruce. I know he's Bruce because they said his name about 15,000 times in the movie.
Tom Skerritt.
Tom Skerritt.
The great Tom Skerritt.
The great Tom's scared, except for that film.
A great film.
So anyway, so you got the Body Snatchers, the 1993 film, and then after that you had, they did a movie. They're just basically mixing up all these titles because you had the one called Body Snatchers, then you had one called The Invasion, which was made in 2007, which really has very little to do with the Jack Finney novel, other than the fact that they have to fall asleep.
Terrible.
This had Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig. It was directed by because this is what you have to do now for any time you talk about movies. They're kind of directed by the guy who had made an incredible German language film called Downfall, which Adam Wingard recommended to me, which has to do with Hitler's last hours in the bunker as Berlin is being invaded. And Wingard is a big fan of World War II history, as am I, just history in general, but especially that. And I watched that movie and I was like, wow, this is the guy who's going to be remaking or doing at least the new adaptation of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Like, wow. And I was so stupid because I actually thought that someone would leave that guy alone in Hollywood to make a movie. And I don't know what I was thinking. Because
you see what happens when you leave someone alone? You get Abel Ferreira's Body Snatchers.
Well, they didn't leave him alone either.
Well, I don't know what that cast is, but it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well,
I mean, if you're not gonna cast name actors, then at least cast good ones.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing about the Body Snatcher thing, the one we were talking about before, the Abel Ferrara one, though, I think there was just so much wrong with that. I mean, it just looks like it looks like a Justice League kind of movie where, you made something and then you looked at it and you were like, well, I don't really like this. So maybe we should rethink this entire thing. And maybe this director needs to go. And maybe we should rewrite 5 scenes and then reshoot them. And then after we reshuffle this edit, maybe we should rewrite 10 more with another writer and get another director in there. And then we'll do a reshuffle again. And then eventually you watch this fucking movie. And it's like, who in the God's name greenlit this piece of shit? And inevitably, it was a really good script that was greenlit. And then you get to this end result, and it's like everybody has second-guessed everybody else because everybody thinks they know what the fucking kids at the mall theater want to watch. And so they've taken all the balls out of the movie because they're afraid that the kids might not like it. And so you get this watered down, mixed up, re-edited, rehashed piece of shit that has basically no life to it anymore. There's nothing about it that stands out. It's like Seinfeld. This is a weird example, but no one wanted to put Seinfeld on the air because they were like, this is too weird. And then you put it on the air, everyone starts to watch it, and they're like, oh, let's make 1,000 Seinfelds. You don't know what people want until they see it. People don't know what they want until they see it. And then they go,
it's too risky. It's too risky.
Yeah, I know. That's the problem. That's the problem with Hollywood. No
risks with money.
No risks ever come down. No risks. And then they want great movies. Well, you don't get great movies if you don't take risks. It's just impossible. You're going to get the same shit everybody else does over and over and over again. And then you can't complain when you don't get anything new because you're not allowing anybody with a new vision to do anything. So it's either accept what you get and stop complaining, or just accept the fact that you're not going to get anything new.
Mm-hmm. Hollywood.
But anyway, this Invasion movie didn't even have pod people in it. It was like a virus. This shuttle comes down, burns up in outer space, and it lays this virus on people. But the problem is, if you go to sleep, the virus activates and then kind of takes you over. It's not really Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's sort of Invasion of the Body Snatchers-esque. But anyway, they spent like between $65 and $80 million because they reshot the whole thing with, they took the Downfall guy out, sent him back to Germany and said, go make good films in another country. We don't need you here. And then they hired James McTeague to rewrite it. And the Wachowskis came in, and at some point they rewrote a bunch of it. And so, you just try to crowbar that into what you've already shot, and then you watch the movie, and none of it makes sense. About the only thing that's memorable about the movie is that Nicole Kidman and the kid had a car wreck on the set, which I think she had to get surgery for, because they were in a picture car that slammed into a pole. The lost control and slammed into a pole. But anyway, that's the Invasion. It's a shame that they hadn't made, really good. It's like I say, this is something that you could do without even, rehashing too much. If you want to do modern, like every 20 years, do a modern adaptation of the book or something, not even trying to remake something that's already happened with these films. Because as bad as Body Snatchers was, the 1993 one, definitely wasn't trying to be the 1978 version, which may have been to its detriment, But so anyway, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I have to give it a pretty high grade because it is a film that I think is. Mm-hmm. It's complete. It doesn't seem like it's been meddled with. It seems like it's what Philip Kaufman wanted to make.
I give it 2 thumbs up.
Oh, yeah. I give it 2 thumbs up and then, some toes.
A toe, yeah.
Yeah, 1 toe.
10 out of 10.
That's right. And Rebecca, what are you thinking?
It's a good film.
It is, yeah.
An 8+.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So.
It's back when they made good films.
Yeah.
The 70s.
Late 70s, yeah.
I really like Donald Sutherland and Brooke Adams in the movie together. I think they have a great chemistry.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I do. I think that they have a good chemistry. Leonard Nimoy or Nimoy, depending on how clever you want to be when you say it. I always said Nimoy, but I've noticed a lot of people will say Leonard Nimoy. He's great in the movie. Jeff Goldblum is tall and gangly as ever. I love him. Veronica Cartwright, a year away from Alien. Yeah, it's a great cast. And I really am glad we got to get together and talk about it, amongst many other things. But yeah. So, guys, I want to thank you for joining.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10 from Damian. And Rebecca, she likes it.
It's an all-timer for me. It's an all-timer.
Yeah.
Top 100.
Oh, yeah. And so anyway, it's one of my, it's right on up there on my list. So Damian.
Top 100?
Top one. Oh, absolutely. Top 100.
What's better? Invasion of the Body Snatchers 78 or The Irishman?
Oh, God. You hit me with a tough one there. I've lived with Invasion of the Body Snatchers a lot longer. So it kind of has.
Watched 10 hours of The Irishman this week.
I have. Yeah, I have. Yeah.
I don't want Invasion of the Body Snatchers better.
Yeah, I mean, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
It's cinema. It may not be cinema according to Martin Scorsese, but it's cinema.
Well, absolutely, it's cinema. Yeah. Well, the Scorsese thing, that I get what he was saying.
Just messing around.
I get what he was saying, but I just think, I think that was a poor choice of. I love you, Marty, but I love Marvel and I love all the rest of it, and I like to be entertained.
That's why I'm boycotting The Irishman.
Well, I can't go that far because I love Martin Scorsese and I love, Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and Joe Pesci and Harvey Keitel and Bobby Cannavale, and I love these actors. I can't boycott it. I'm
not boycotting it. I just haven't watched it yet.
That's actually a good movie. But anyway. Off of that subject, I'm going to say goodbye to you guys.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10, though I don't want to. Damian, thank you for joining me.
Of course.
And Rebecca, thank you for joining me.
Yeah.
And next time we'll get together and we'll talk about, I don't know, some sort of a fluffy comedy like The Burbs.
Yeah.
The Burbs.
I'm signing you both up right now.
Okay.
But until then, I want everybody watching to have a good week and take care of yourselves.
Bye.